will all hang separately.
And listen, I mean, Nigel Farage, I mean, I cannot stress, and yourself and the rest of the party, UKIP, coming from nowhere, now the fastest growing party in Europe, other parties joining, other parties picking up the nationalist rhetoric. This is beautiful. Le Pen, all the rest of it. I mean, this is clearly rising, and globally, this could bring in the new renaissance.
Remember that this is not a nationalist movement, UKIP. What UKIP is a democratic, freedom-loving movement. We are not there to say a nation state is the only way we can conduct our affairs. We are there to say that a European superstate that we do not elect and that our people cannot control, that is not the way forward for Europe any more than it is for our country.
Where they arrest people for their speech, where they exempt themselves from taxes. I mean, it's a new royalty, isn't it?
They exempt themselves from taxes. Worse, they exempt themselves also from civil suit and from criminal prosecution. And the people who run the central stability.
Yeah, tell folks who these new sovereigns are on these bureaucracies and how they set those up briefly. I mean, this is amazing.
Well, for instance, the European Stability Pact is a good example. This is the thing that was intended to address the collapse in the euro, which is still, of course, collapsing and will collapse still faster now that Britain's voted out. But they set up a governing body of absolute bankers, and these bankers have been given by the treaty establishing the Stability Pact total immunity from civil suit or criminal prosecution for any actions they take. And one of their actions that they are empowered by this treaty to take is to order any member state of the Stability Pact, fortunately not including Britain, to hand over any amount of money that they demand.
That's the bail-ins.
As soon as they demand it.
And that's how they're able to install leaders, too. That's how they're able to tell places like Greece or Italy, hey, here's your new leader. Back in 70 seconds with final comments from Lord Monckton and Kit Daniels. This is so incredible. World dictatorship is their goal. Telling you, it's amazing. Stay with us. All right. Again, I get upset. I start hyperventilating when we sit here and see open tyranny being set up and the general public's in a coma. I don't normally disagree with Lord Monckton because he's one of the leading experts on the EU tyranny and advised Margaret Thatcher on it, who opposed going into it and spoke out against it. I mean, this is an unelected bureaucracy of mega banks taking over countries and installing leaders. But just a closing comment from him and then one from Kit Daniels ahead of our next guest. We're going to get to Supreme Court rulings and more on Brexit coming up. I look at the euro, how they claim they set it up as a steel trade deal, an economic commission and all this. And I've seen some of the leaders of the euro admit it was set up to consolidate control. I think it's been a tyranny from the beginning and certainly is a naked tyranny now. I mean, why do you say it wasn't started as a tyranny, Lord Monckton?
Originally, at least this was the official declared purpose, let's be clear about this, as a means of, it was called the European Coal and Steel Community. Its job was to make sure there was enough coal and steel to rebuild Europe after the Second World War. That was its ostensible.
That was the Treaty of London in 48, wasn't it? And then in 56, the Treaty of Rome.
And the Treaty of Rome was where it began to diverge from that original purpose. And because the treaty that set up the coal and steel community was a purely technocratic treaty just to make sure there was enough coal and steel to go round, that didn't need to be run democratically. But the people who then decided they would try and create a European superstate moved in, people like Jean Monnet, and they quite explicitly said, well, we don't want democracy. What we want is the governing elites to come together and form a Europe which we, the dictators, will run.
And by the way, the German president, just interrupt,
lost the war, then promptly moved in and tried to do bureaucratically what they couldn't do by force of arms. And that has been the continuing problem with it ever since. And that is why, in the end, the likes of me, who at first were in favor of the free trade area, which the European Union originally was when it was just the European communities, we turned against it when it began galloping towards being the superstate that everyone can now see it becoming.
And in closing, let me ask you this question. Infowars.com story. German president, there's video, says the elites are not the problem. This is a quote. The populations are the problem, close quote. Are these people completely mentally ill? Why are they so arrogant? Why do they admit everything about world government, but then have their media say it doesn't exist?
They are so arrogant precisely because the media have been so comprehensively captured. And if there's one book you need to read to work out how this was done, then it's Ion Mihai Pacepa, who was the head of the Securitate under Ceausescu's Romania. And he headed the disinformation directorate of the KGB, whose sole function was to denigrate and destroy the reputations of all the enemies of communism throughout Europe. And they managed to recruit 1 million European communists.
That's right.
To help out in...
and even after they fell, the brainwashed European communists have continued the mission.
They have indeed continued the mission, even though Pacepa eventually defected to the West and wrote a book saying that there were 1 million of them. When I tell people it was that many, they express shock and they just think I'm some kind of Reds under the beds merchant. But the phrase Reds under the beds was invented by Pacepa. It was invented as part
Well, sure, they declassified a bunch of KGB files a few years ago and it was all documented. In fact, why don't you review that book for us and come back on and do a full hour about the controlled media in the future. scienceandpublicpolicy.org. We salute you. Congratulations, Lord Monckton, and thank you for your fight. It's got to feel good to come from nowhere in the last 30 years and you and Farage and others to be leading a global movement that I just feel honored to be part of, sir, and Trump is as well. Well, God bless you and thank you for your help, Alex. It's been absolutely vital. Well, thank you. It's amazing. Well, we're not lying down, that's for sure. Kit, thank you for riding shotgun with us. More articles at InfoWars. Quick comment, Kit Daniels.
Well, it's interesting, Alex. You said earlier that the EU is a Nazi program. Now, it's interesting to point out that the Nazi Germany was not a technocracy, but they did put technocrats in power. And that's what the Trilateral Commission grew out of in the 70s. You know, you had two separate movements, the U.S. technocracy and the German technocracy. The German technocracy is what survived. I think the U.S. technocracy died in the 30s at the outbreak of World War II. So, yeah, it's like Adolf Hitler was the last person to create a European superstate. So, yeah, this is a Nazi
It's program. Incredible. Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Lord Monckton. In 2007, I shot a whole bunch of videos. We probably wrote 10, 15 articles, had guests on. The British Ministry of Defense came out and said that by 2016, 2017, they began to believe that global collapse would happen and that hundreds of millions would starve to death. There'd be huge mobs all over the world, basically burning things down. I didn't say that. I'm not really a fear porn dealer, but I do respect the British Ministry of Defense. And a declassified portion of that 23-page report was put out. The London Guardian picked it up. The headline was, "Flash Mobs and Brain Chips in Your Future." Then about 2 years later, it turned out that was a report on a U.S. report that in 2009 got partially declassified, saying that global food production and other issues were going to cause a massive deficit that would begin in Africa and the Middle East and cause revolution. And they predicted it in around the year 2010, which happened right on time. And then it went on from there to describe the rest of the collapse of the world. I was attacked by the New York Times, you name it, that I was the fearmonger saying that. It's like when they have a major publication come out like the Army Times and admit they're doing Army drills, and we point out, hey, it shows the U.S., as their target and says Texas hostile. Is this more conditioning to accept military on the streets? And then they say that I said they were going to take over a few years ago and kill everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what they're preparing for. And I know a lot of military people. You see a lot of them on the show. And they talk about the preparations for civil unrest. But hey, Vice of HBO has come out and said it. Oh my gosh, Drudge Report has 2 links today. It's up on Infowars.com as well. And we're going to our guest. FEMA contractor predicts social unrest caused by 395% food price spikes. Now, we predicted a 30% spike in the next year a few months ago when we offered 30% off or to 40% off on InfoWars Select super high quality storable food powered by My Patriot. We private label to give you the lowest prices. It's already the lowest prices at its regular price, but we're doing 15% off. I saw this morning and I said, look, this will sell food. People need food. And that helps support the broadcast. It's a win-win. But I said, this is scary. And I've read this story several times. We're going to cover it after Joseph Farah leaves us. But the U.S. national security industry is planning for the impact of an unprecedented global food crisis lasting as long as a decade. That is the exact Pentagon report, 2006, British report, 2007. According to reports by government contractor, the studies published by the CNA Corporation, December 2015. Oh, you just learned of now. Unreported until now, describe a detailed simulation of protracted global food crisis, and it goes on. Yeah, and it all starts in 2016, 2017, accelerates through 2020 to 2030. We broke this. We've basically broken everything. And guess who else has broken all this? WorldNetDaily.com. And listen, I don't get paid to say that. Joseph Farah, when they got the, and I'm not, because he hates this. He wants to come on and cover news. He says, please don't talk about me. He said this before, Alex, but I'm going to do it. Because I got to just call out these heroes like Drudge and Lord Monckton and Mark Moreno and others. When they did a FOIA request last year and got the thousands of pages from the Clinton Foundation, from the Clinton Library, it was all how to stop the new press in the future, how to stop Joseph Farah, the Western Journalism Center, because if Joseph Farah succeeds, it'll change the face of media and there'll be new independent media. We've got to block liberals and conservatives. We've got to call them conspiracy theorists, order the controlled media to do that. So we literally are getting the guy on that led the way to what Drudge was able to do, what we've done, and what you're able to do. Some people say, well, I hope Drudge gets shut down by the Federal Elections Commission. I hope you do. I'll get bigger. No, they'll shut you down too. And now they're handing the internet over to the UN. That's in the Washington Post today. So all I'm saying is everything we warned of is epically now happening. So I want to ask Joseph Farah, in the limited time we have, he's a busy guy. I want to cover Brexit. I want to cover Trump with him. But, talk to one of the wise men out there, a true patriot. What point have we gotten to, Joseph, WND.com, where everything we've talked about is now admitted, our credibility is exploding, but instead the globalist left just says they're going to arrest everybody, and the Democratic platform now says arrest climate change deniers. I mean, it's just crazy. It's bizarre. What is going on? Where do you think this is going?
Well, it's not going in a good direction, that's for sure, Alex. And thank you very much for having me on, by the way. I appreciate it. We haven't visited for a while.
Oh, I had to twist your arm, let's be honest.
I didn't think you liked me anymore. But, we're in a world of hurt. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, there's not much good news on the horizon. We look for it every day so people don't go insane, but it is hard to find. I think you're talking about good news. I think what we saw happen in Great Britain last week was some good news. I think the people, and it's not just people in the United States, obviously, are beginning to see so much of the kinds of things that we've been talking about, the terrible direction we've been going in, and they're reacting as best they can. The question is whether, the ruling authorities are going to pay attention to the will of the people. We've got an election coming up this year. I think as far as that goes, in the past, you could argue whether there was a dime's worth of difference between the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee. We talked about that in 2004 and 2008 and 2012, and it was arguable. It's not even arguable. It's not. In this election, there's trillions of dollars worth of difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Would you agree?
Oh, there is light years of difference, and we see the establishment showing that. I mean, they're so afraid. Why are they so afraid of Trump?
Because he cannot be controlled. I mean, this is a guy who, when he talks to the American people, they listen. He has, and the media cannot control this guy. When I say he can't be controlled, I'm really talking about the media, because what are they going to do? They have to stop covering him. They have to stop putting him on TV. That hurts their ratings when they do that. Now you're hitting them right in the bottom line. And this is what is so spectacular, I think, about this election. It's such a quantum difference from the recent elections we've seen over many, many years.
And he does know his timing, because all over the world, nationalists and patriots are getting in. There's a populist surge. So that was my earlier question. The paradox of huge global awakening, world government out in the open, totalitarian, and so people are really waking up. But at the same time, the left is re-entrenching and just getting more violent, more bizarre, more mentally ill, more anti-free speech. I mean, I've been a big critic of the Republicans, just like you've been, and some fake conservatives. But with the left, it seems like they've collectively gone completely insane.
Well, that's the danger. We've always seen the totalitarian nature of this, movement that is, they call themselves progressives. I love that. Put that in, between quotes. What are they progressing toward is the big question. And but ultimately, we're seeing like never before the totalitarian nature of the left, and so we're living in very dangerous times here. We're seeing, at the same time we see the expression in Great Britain against globalism, for independence, for accountability.